You ever notice how the world can be loud, full of people talking, posting, pretending, yet somehow you still feel invisible? You can sit in a room full of laughter and feel like a ghost in the corner, smiling just to blend in. That's the part nobody talks about. The quiet loneliness that lives inside people who look like they have it all together. This speech isn't about sadness, it's about power. It's about a woman who walks alone, not because she's unwanted, but because she finally understands her worth. She's the woman who's been through betrayal, through judgment, through nights of silence that taught her more than conversations ever could. Society might call her the woman with no friends, but that's only because they don't understand her peace. See, there's a strength that comes from walking by yourself. It's the kind of power that doesn't need an audience. When the world goes quiet, that's when you hear your own voice the loudest. So tonight, I'm not here to talk about loneliness. I'm here to talk about evolution, about finding connection in solitude, power in silence, and freedom in being completely unapologetically alone. Isolation in a connected world is one of the deepest paradoxes of our time. We live in an age where every person is just a click away, where social media gives us instant access to voices, faces, and feelings from across the world. Yet for many women, this hyper-connected landscape doesn't create belonging. It amplifies the silence. A woman can post a photo that gets hundreds of likes, but when the night gets quiet and the screen goes dark, she feels unseen. The world has confused connection with attention and attention with care. Real friendship, the kind that listens, understands, and stands beside you, has become harder to find. For a woman who has no friends, this isolation can start quietly. It might begin with small moments, when she looks around a room and realizes she's smiling just to keep up appearances, when she scrolls through conversations that feel shallow, when she gives and no one gives back. It's not that she doesn't know people, it's that she can't find a space where she truly belongs. The world rewards loud personalities, constant sharing, and surface level energy, but she's built from something quieter. She sees deeper, feels harder, and notices things most people overlook. And because of that, she often feels like an outsider in a world obsessed with pretending. Society rarely makes space for women who choose solitude or who simply can't find their place in the social circle. A woman without a group of friends is quickly judged. People wonder what's wrong with her. They call her distant, cold, or antisocial. They don't see the strength it takes to walk alone in a culture that glorifies popularity. She moves through life without the safety net of validation, without people clapping for her choices. But isolation becomes her mirror. It shows her what's real and what's noise. It teaches her the difference between being surrounded and being supported. Technology has created a world where people share everything but understand nothing. Conversations happen through screens, feelings are translated into emojis, and friendships are measured by streaks and followers. A woman without friends can scroll for hours and still feel like no one truly sees her. The world tells her she should be networking, putting herself out there, finding her tribe, but she's tired of forcing connections that don't feed her soul. She's tired of pretending to fit in places that never felt right. So she retreats, not because she's giving up, but because she's trying to find something real. That isolation can also come from pain. Sometimes she's been betrayed by those she trusted most. Sometimes she's been the friend who showed up every time, only to realize no one showed up for her. Each disappointment built a wall, not out of anger, but out of protection. She learned to survive in silence, to celebrate her wins alone, to wipe her own tears without witnesses. There's power in that, but also a heavy loneliness that seeps into her daily life. She becomes both strong and wary, both grounded and aching for something more. In this connected world, loneliness hits differently. It's not just the absence of people, it's the awareness that everyone else seems to have someone. When she sees others posting pictures with friends, laughing, traveling together, she feels a quiet ache. Not jealousy, just a longing for genuine energies, for a space where she can drop her armor. But she also knows that not all company is good company. Many people surround themselves with friends to escape themselves. She faces herself every day. She's learning to be her own companion, her own listener, her own comfort. Still, the weight of isolation can't be ignored. It affects her in invisible ways. When no one checks in, her mind begins to doubt her worth. When no one asks how she's doing, she wonders if she matters. That's the cruelty of modern loneliness. It hides beneath a world that looks so connected. People assume that because she's online, she must be fine. But connection without intimacy only deepens the void. She wants conversation that feels alive, presence that feels human, love that doesn't need a filter. Yet, in this solitude, something sacred grows. She starts to hear her own voice again, clear and unfiltered. She starts to understand what peace feels like without performance. The noise of the world fades, and in that silence, she discovers the woman she truly is. Isolation becomes less of a punishment and more of a pause, a space to rebuild, to rest, to realign. She learns that loneliness doesn't define her, it refines her. A woman with no friends in today's connected world isn't invisible. She's often just unseen by those who look but don't look deeply enough. Her isolation is both wound and wisdom. She's learning to turn silence into strength, absence into awareness, and solitude into sanctuary. In a world addicted to connection, her stillness becomes an act of rebellion. She's proof that even in a crowd, you can be alone, and even in solitude, you can be whole. Silent strength is the kind of power that doesn't announce itself, the kind that moves quietly through pain, through struggle, through long nights that nobody sees. A woman who carries silent strength doesn't need to speak loud or show off her endurance. She lives it. It's written in her eyes, in the way she handles herself when everything around her is falling apart. The world often confuses quietness with weakness, but for her, silence is not surrender. It's strategy. She has learned that not every fight deserves her energy, and not every person deserves her truth. She knows that the loudest person in the room is rarely the strongest. It's the one who keeps her composure when chaos tries to break her. There's a certain type of woman who has learned strength through survival. She's been through things that would have crushed others, but she doesn't broadcast her pain for sympathy. She holds it, processes it, and turns it into wisdom. People see her calm and assume her life must be easy. They don't see the storms she's weathered quietly, the heartbreaks that shattered her, the betrayals that made her doubt her worth, the disappointments that taught her to rely on herself. She's been broken in ways that left scars you can't see, but she doesn't use those scars for pity. She wears them as invisible medals, proof that she fought battles alone and still stands tall. Silent strength is born in the moments when she wants to scream but chooses to breathe instead. It's in the morning she wakes up and decides to try again even when she doesn't feel like it. It's in how she keeps her dignity when people mistreat her. It's in how she forgives, not because they deserve it, but because she refuses to carry their darkness. She knows that peace is priceless, and protecting it sometimes means walking away without explanation. Her silence isn't emptiness, it's full of understanding. It's a choice to rise above noise, to keep her energy sacred, to not waste words on those who wouldn't listen anyway. Society praises visible strength, the kind that's loud, bold, and public, but the quiet kind often goes unnoticed. A woman with silent strength doesn't post her pain online. She doesn't perform her healing. She grows in private. She cries where no one can see her and wipes her own tears before stepping outside like nothing happened. The world applauds resilience when it's visible, but her strength lives in the unseen. She doesn't need validation for surviving. Her reward is her own evolution. Every time she chooses peace over reaction, understanding over anger, patience over bitterness, she wins. She knows the cost of being strong. It's heavy. People come to her for comfort because she seems unbreakable. They lean on her, unload on her, and she listens, gives advice, helps them heal. But when it's her turn to fall apart, she often has no one to catch her. That's the quiet tragedy behind silent strength. The stronger she seems, the more people forget she's human too. She carries her own pain and often the pain of others. She doesn't complain because she's learned that most people only listen to respond, not to understand. So she keeps it inside, not out of pride, but out of self-preservation. There are days when her silence feels heavy, when the weight of everything she's holding threatens to break her. But even then, she doesn't lose control. She steps back, takes a deep breath, and reminds herself that storms don't last forever. She's learned to find power in stillness, to let her calm speak louder than her chaos. She's seen what happens when people let emotions lead them, and she refuses to give the world that satisfaction. Her silence is her discipline, and discipline is her strength. This kind of strength also comes from self-awareness. She knows who she is and doesn't need to prove it. She's not chasing approval. She's not begging for understanding. She's done trying to explain her choices to people who were never meant to understand her journey. Silent strength is knowing when to speak and when to let silence do the talking. It's knowing that peace is more valuable than being right. It's realizing that she doesn't need to fight every battle. Sometimes walking away is the loudest statement she can make. There's beauty in the way she rebuilds herself quietly. Every setback becomes a lesson. Every loss becomes direction. She doesn't let her pain turn her bitter. She lets it make her wiser, more grounded, more intentional. Her silence holds power because it's backed by experience, and her calm presence demands respect. She may not always be noticed, but she's always unshaken. She doesn't move to impress, she moves to grow. And while the world rushes and shouts, she stays steady, patient, grounded, and touchable. Her strength may be silent, but it's unbreakable. Society has always had a way of labeling women, defining them not by who they are, but by how they fit into the expectations set around them. A woman without friends, a woman who moves alone, is often misunderstood in this world. People see her solitude and assume it's a reflection of her worth, as if her value depends on how many people surround her. Society teaches that a woman should always belong to something, a circle, a family, a relationship, a group. It praises connection, but often at the cost of individuality. When she doesn't fit that mold, when she walks alone, people start to talk. They whisper stories that try to explain her silence because they can't accept that solitude can be a choice. From a young age, women are taught that relationships define them. A good daughter, a loyal friend, a devoted partner, a caring mother. These are the roles she's told to fill. If she steps outside those roles, even for her own peace, she's seen as distant or strange. The idea that a woman might choose solitude for growth, reflection, or healing rarely crosses people's minds. Society is uncomfortable with the woman who refuses to perform her connections. They expect her to smile in groups, to belong somewhere visible, to prove she's likable. When she doesn't, they label her cold, arrogant, or broken. They can't see that her distance isn't rejection, it's self-preservation. The judgment often comes disguised as concern. People say things like, you should get out more, or don't you want to make some friends? They mean well, but they speak from a world that measures happiness by social activity. They don't understand that sometimes peace doesn't come from people, it comes from silence. The woman with no friends isn't always lonely. Sometimes she's just done entertaining noise that drains her spirit. She's been through situations where being surrounded still felt empty, where conversations were shallow, and where loyalty was temporary. After a while, she realized that solitude was safer than pretending. Society doesn't handle independence well, especially when it comes from a woman. It likes to see women dependent, emotionally or socially, because it makes them easier to define and control. A woman who walks alone threatens that comfort. She doesn't fit neatly into the narratives built around her. People ask, what's wrong with her? Instead of asking, what's right with her? They see her quiet and mistake it for sadness. They see her strength and mistake it for arrogance. It's easier for them to criticize what they can't categorize. She's breaking a pattern that others are too afraid to face, the pattern of needing others to feel whole. Judgment doesn't always come from strangers. It can come from those closest to her. Friends might drift away because they don't understand her boundaries. Family might pressure her to be more social, to make an effort. But she's learned that effort is wasted when it's not mutual. She's learned that loyalty doesn't mean sacrificing herself for the comfort of others. Every time she chooses solitude, she's reclaiming her energy from people who didn't respect it. Society calls that selfishness, but in truth, it's self-respect. Women like her often carry the scars of past friendships that turn toxic. She's been the one who supported others only to be left behind when she needed help. She's been the one whose honesty was mistaken for attitude. She's been the one blamed for walking away, even when she was only protecting herself. Over time, those experiences teach her that not everyone deserves access to her space, so she moves quietly, choosing depth over popularity, peace over pretense. She knows that true connection can't be forced, and she's done trying to fit into places that make her feel small. The hardest part about societal judgment is that it tries to convince her something's wrong with her healing. When she chooses solitude, people think she's bitter. When she focuses on herself, they call her selfish. When she refuses to gossip or participate in meaningless drama, they call her boring. The world fears what it can't label, and she refuses to be labeled. She's not lonely, she's discerning. She's not antisocial, she's intentional. She's not unfriendly, she's peaceful. Every assumption they make about her says more about their discomfort than her truth. Still, the constant pressure can be exhausting. There are moments when she questions herself, when she wonders if maybe society is right, if maybe being alone means something's missing. But then she remembers the quiet freedom she's found, the clarity that only solitude gives. She remembers how she no longer bends herself to please people who never understood her. She remembers how light she feels without the weight of false friendships. That's when she realizes that their judgment doesn't define her. It only reveals the limits of their understanding. The woman who walks alone in a world that demands connection is doing something brave. She's choosing herself in a culture that tells her to choose everyone else first. She's rewriting the story of what it means to be fulfilled, showing that friendship isn't measured by numbers but by authenticity. She's proving that a woman doesn't need a crowd to have value, that her worth isn't up for public approval. Society may still judge her, but she's learned that judgment fades. Peace doesn't, and though she may walk alone, she walks freely, guided not by what people expect, but by what her soul truly needs. Self-discovery through solitude is one of the most powerful and misunderstood journeys a woman can take. It begins quietly, often not by choice but by circumstance. Maybe she lost people she thought would stay, or maybe she realized that the world around her was too noisy for her to hear her own thoughts. Whatever the reason, she finds herself alone, and at first that loneliness feels heavy. The silence is uncomfortable, the quiet feels unfamiliar, and the absence of constant company exposes emotions she has long ignored. But as time passes, she starts to notice something different. The silence that once felt like punishment becomes space for reflection. It becomes the mirror that shows her who she truly is when no one else is watching. In solitude, she begins to peel away the layers that life has forced on her. She starts questioning the things she used to accept without thought. She wonders why she always said yes when she wanted to say no, why she gave her energy to people who drained her, and why she hid parts of herself to make others comfortable. For the first time, she's not performing, she's just being. There's no one to impress, no image to maintain. It's raw, it's real, and it's uncomfortable. But it's also freeing. The quiet gives her room to hear her own voice, to listen to what her heart has been trying to tell her all along. She realizes how often she lived for others, how often she sought validation from outside instead of from within. Solitude becomes the teacher that no one told her she needed. There's a deep kind of clarity that only comes from being alone. Without distractions, she starts to see patterns in her choices, her relationships, her reactions. She recognizes where her pain comes from and how much of it she's carried that never belonged to her. The people she tried to please, The expectations she tried to meet, the roles she tried to play, they all start to lose their power. She begins to understand that so much of what she thought was actually what others wanted her to be. Solitude gives her permission to return to herself, to rebuild her identity from the inside out. At first, this process feels lonely because growth often isolates before it elevates. She misses the comfort of noise, even if that noise came from people who didn't truly care. There are nights when the silence feels like too much, when she wonders if she's made a mistake by pulling away. But with time, she starts to feel something stronger than loneliness: peace. It's the kind of peace that doesn't depend on anyone else's presence or approval. She learns to enjoy her own company, to find joy in simple moments, to create her own rhythm. That peace doesn't come easy, but once it arrives, she guards it fiercely. Self-discovery through solitude also teaches her about boundaries. When she's alone, she learns what drains her and what nourishes her. She learns to trust her instincts again. She begins to say no without guilt and yes without fear. She no longer needs to explain her choices to people who wouldn't understand them anyway. That's the quiet power of solitude. It gives her back control of her energy. She no longer settles for less because she understands her worth. She no longer tolerates chaos because she knows the value of calm. The more time she spends with herself, the more she realizes that she's been looking for the world to give her something she was always capable of giving herself: love, validation, and belonging. There's a beauty in rediscovering yourself after years of being what everyone else needed. She starts to remember the things she loved before the world told her who to be. Maybe it's writing, painting, walking, or just breathing without pressure. Every small act of self-care becomes a declaration that she matters. Solitude teaches her that her own company isn't something to fear, but something to cherish. She starts to enjoy her thoughts, her silence, her dreams. She realizes that loneliness and solitude are not the same. Loneliness is the absence of others, but solitude is the presence of herself. Over time, her solitude transforms into strength. She no longer feels incomplete without people. She can stand in a room full of noise and still feel centered. She becomes more intentional about who she allows back in her space because she knows what peace costs. Her energy shifts, calmer, wiser, more grounded. She doesn't chase connection anymore. She attracts it naturally because she's aligned with who she truly is. Self-discovery through solitude isn't about rejecting people. It's about rediscovering yourself so that when you do connect, it comes from authenticity, not need. What she once thought was isolation becomes liberation. She sees herself clearly without the blur of expectation. She learns that being alone is not the same as being unloved. In solitude, she finds her purpose, her boundaries, her confidence. She understands that she doesn't need a crowd to validate her worth. Her existence alone is enough. The woman who once feared silence now walks in it with peace because she knows that solitude didn't break her. It revealed her. Healing from betrayal or misunderstanding is one of the hardest and most transformative experiences a woman can go through. It's not just about losing people. It's about losing the version of herself that trusted too easily, that gave without question, that believed loyalty was always mutual. Betrayal cuts deep because it doesn't come from enemies. It comes from those she once called friends, the ones she confided in, defended, and loved without hesitation. When trust is broken, it doesn't just hurt her heart, it shakes her sense of reality. She starts to question everything: what was real, what was fake, and how she didn't see it coming. Healing from that kind of pain doesn't happen overnight. It's a slow, quiet process that happens between the moments of remembering and the moments of letting go. At first, the pain is sharp and confusing. She replays every memory, every conversation, trying to find the moment where things shifted. She wonders if she missed the signs, if maybe she gave too much, or if she was just never enough. The betrayal echoes in her mind like a broken record, each thought cutting a little deeper. People tell her to move on, but they don't understand that betrayal isn't something you simply forget. It's something you recover from piece by piece. It changes the way she sees the world. It teaches her that not everyone who smiles means well, that not every bond is built on honesty, and that love without respect is just manipulation dressed as care. Misunderstanding can be just as painful as betrayal because it twists her truth. Sometimes she loses people not because of lies or deceit, but because they never really saw her for who she was. She's judged by assumptions, blamed for things she didn't do, or dismissed because her silence was mistaken for pride. That kind of pain is different. It's quieter but heavier. It's knowing that she tried to explain herself, tried to show her heart, but people only saw what they wanted to see. She learns that being misunderstood doesn't mean she's wrong. It just means she's deeper than the surface level world around her. Still, it hurts to be unseen, to be painted with false colors by people who never took the time to understand her shades. Healing from this kind of pain forces her to look inward. She realizes she can't control what people do or think, but she can control how she responds. In the beginning, she might want revenge or at least closure, but over time she learns that peace is better than payback. She stops chasing explanations from people who already decided not to listen. She accepts that closure doesn't always come with an apology. Sometimes it comes in the form of self-respect. The moment she chooses to stop reopening the wound just to understand why it happened, she starts to rebuild her trust, not in others but in herself. She learns to trust her intuition again. The same intuition she once ignored because she wanted to believe in people more than she believed in her own instincts. Healing also means forgiving, but not in the way people think. Forgiveness isn't about letting them back in or pretending it didn't happen. It's about freeing herself from the weight of resentment. She realizes that holding on to anger keeps her tied to the pain, and she's ready to be free. Forgiveness becomes a form of self-love, a quiet decision to move forward without bitterness. It doesn't mean she forgets what happened. It means she refuses to let it define her. She learns to see the betrayal as a lesson, a painful but necessary teacher that showed her the importance of boundaries, discernment, and emotional independence. The process of healing transforms her in ways that even she doesn't notice at first. She becomes more careful with her energy. She no longer gives pieces of herself to people who haven't earned them. She pays attention to actions, not just words. She values consistency over charm. Her heart becomes wiser, not harder. She learns that healing isn't about building walls. It's about building gates with locks that open only for those who prove their worth. The woman who once trusted blindly now trusts consciously. She doesn't push people away. She simply protects her peace. As time goes on, she begins to see that the betrayal wasn't an ending but a redirection. It pushed her towards solitude, self-awareness, and growth. The misunderstanding that once broke her now teaches her patience. She understands that not everyone is meant to understand her, and that's okay. She doesn't need everyone to like her or believe her. She just needs to be true to herself. Healing brings her back to her own center, where peace feels more important than proving a point. When she looks back, she realizes she's not the same woman she was before the pain. She's softer in some ways and stronger in others. The things that once shattered her no longer have power. She's learned to stand alone without bitterness, to forgive without forgetting, and to love again without fear. Healing from betrayal or misunderstanding didn't make her colder. It made her real. It stripped away the illusions and left her with truth. That peace is found not in being understood by others, but in understanding herself. Redefining connection is a journey that begins when a woman realizes that not all relationships bring peace and not all company brings comfort. For much of her life, she might have believed that being surrounded by people meant she was loved, that having friends meant she belonged. Society paints connection as something external, a network of people, constant communication, shared moments, social gatherings. But when she starts losing herself in those connections, when she feels lonelier in a crowd than she ever did alone, she begins to question what connection really means. It's in those quiet in-between spaces that she starts to understand. Connection isn't about numbers, it's about depth. It's not about how many people know her name, but how many truly know her heart. At first, the shift feels strange. She begins to distance herself from people who drain her, from conversations that feel empty, from relationships that take more than they give. The world notices and calls her distant, but what they don't see is that she's not disconnecting. She's redefining connection. She's learning that being connected doesn't mean being constantly available. It means being aligned with herself, her peace, her purpose. She used to think that loneliness came from not having people around her, but she realizes it comes from being surrounded by the wrong energy. When she cuts those ties, she feels lighter. She feels like she can finally breathe without pretending. Redefining connection also means facing herself honestly. When she no longer fills her time with others, she's left with silence, and in that silence, she meets herself again. She starts asking questions she once avoided. Who am I without the roles I play? What do I need, not what do people expect? For the first time, she listens to her inner voice, the one that was always drowned out by noise. She realizes how often she used external connection to avoid internal reflection. But now, solitude becomes a bridge to a different kind of relationship, one with her own soul. She begins to see herself as her first home, her first friend. This realization changes everything. The way she loves, the way she listens, the way she gives. It all becomes intentional. She no longer gives her energy out of obligation or fear of being alone. She gives because she chooses to. She no longer seeks approval because she's already approved of herself. The need for validation fades, replaced by a quiet confidence that comes from self-awareness. When she connects now, it's not from a place of emptiness but abundance. She understands that she can't truly connect with anyone if she's disconnected from herself. That truth shifts the foundation of her relationships. Redefining connection also means accepting that some people aren't meant to stay. There are friends who once felt like family, but as she grows, the bond fades. It's not anger, it's evolution. She learns to let go without resentment, understanding that not everyone is meant to walk the entire journey with her. Some connections were only meant to teach her what love isn't. Others showed her what boundaries look like. The ones that remain are built on honesty, mutual respect, and emotional reciprocity. She doesn't chase people anymore. She attracts those who match her peace, her pace, and her purpose. This new understanding of connection changes her priorities. She no longer values popularity, she values presence. A single meaningful conversation matters more than 100 empty exchanges. She appreciates people who listen with intention, who show up without expectation, who don't demand her energy but share it. She's no longer afraid of solitude because she's learned that being alone doesn't mean she's disconnected. True connection can exist even in silence, through a shared understanding, a moment of kindness, or a deep breath that reminds her she's still here, still whole. Through this process, she learns that connection isn't just with people, it's with life itself. She feels connected to nature, to music, to moments that move her spirit. A sunrise can feel like a conversation. A quiet walk can feel like prayer. She starts to sense the rhythm of the world again, something she couldn't hear when she was surrounded by noise. This is what real connection feels like, not constant communication, but meaningful presence. It's alignment with everything that brings her peace. As she redefines connection, she also redefines love. She no longer believes that love is proven through possession or constant attention. Love to her becomes space, the freedom to be herself, to grow without pressure, to be understood without performance. She learns to love in a way that doesn't consume but nurtures. She surrounds herself with people who bring calm instead of chaos, who inspire her rather than compete with her. Every relationship now adds to her, not drains her. She understands that she doesn't need to chase what's real. It flows naturally when she's living in truth. In this new understanding, she finally feels whole. The emptiness that once haunted her no longer controls her because she's found the connection that matters most, the one between her mind, her body, and her spirit. She realizes that peace is the most powerful bond there is, and she refuses to trade it for temporary companionship. Redefining connection has taught her that true strength isn't in who stands beside her, but in how deeply she stands with herself. So when you hear the words, woman with no friends, don't see her as someone who's missing something. See her as someone who's found something deeper. She's found herself. She's walked through betrayal, through judgment, through nights that tested her spirit, and still chose peace over noise. The world might measure connection by how many people clap for you, but she's learned that true power lies in the quiet, in knowing who you are when no one's watching, and building yourself from the inside out. She's not bitter, she's wiser, not lonely, just selective. She doesn't chase crowds because she's already found home within her own soul. Every scar, every silence, every moment of solitude has turned her into something rare, a woman who stands alone and still stands tall. So the next time you see a woman walking her path by herself, don't pity her, salute her, because that's what strength looks like when it stops needing validation. That's what freedom sounds like when it stops asking for permission. She's not a woman with no friends, she's a woman with no limits, and her silence speaks louder than any applause ever could.